Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I hope that you are.
I am. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me here today. I'm going to ask you two questions. I'm going to ask you to tell me your name and to share anything about yourself you feel comfortable sharing, and we will go from there.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Well, my name is Vickie Gibbs, and I'll share a little bit about myself. So, similar to you, I started out in IT and tech and all that kind of stuff. So, basically, came up through high tech startups, started out as an engineer, and then went back and got my MBA and moved into executive roles and am now a serial entrepreneur. I'm very passionate about giving back to the next generation. I like you want to make sure that this next generation doesn't have as many challenges as we did, especially as women in IT and things like that. So I'm always excited to pay it forward and excited to also, I'm a lifelong learner. So I always feel like I can always learn something from every conversation. And I think if we approach things like that, we approach things open-mindedly, which is really important.
So tell me a little bit about you. You said you started out in IT and now you're a serial entrepreneur. How do those two things mesh? So are you still in IT, and is your entrepreneurship in IT or just in human resources?
So my entrepreneurship, a lot of it touches technology in some way, either technology as an enabler or technology as, say, a platform or something like that, or utilizing technology to help things run more efficiently. So I think in today's world, I think it's really hard to not do anything related to IT at all because it touches us in every single way. How I started is I was an electrical engineer. And so I started out as a design engineer doing hardware design. And so I actually think what I do now as an entrepreneur and as a consultant is that, I help create and problem solve, which is exactly where I started. Because when I started out as a design engineer, it was complex problem solving. And so I feel like I'm still doing the complex problem solving. It's just a matter of my tools are a little bit different.
Interesting. So, as a white woman in technology, did you experience any encumbrances or things that would make it difficult for you to succeed in your field?
So I think throughout my career, there have been many times where I've been the only one, the only woman, or the only person who is, not a white male at the table, or one of few. So I think in that there are pluses and minuses to that. The pluses are that people remember me because I don't look like everyone else. The minuses are that there's a lot of just biases that people have. I recall my very first job out of school. I worked for Mitsubishi Semiconductor, a Japanese company. And I remember the first design review I had with my mentor, Ram, who is awesome. We had worked on a design engineering project where we were redesigning a 3 chipset to a 1 chipset. And the original designer and the manager had come over from Japan for the meetings. And we were walking into the meeting, and Ram had asked them if they wanted any coffee. And they looked at me and they said, yes, cream with sugar. And so in that moment, it was defining for a variety of reasons. But I think always in those moments, we can never control what people do, but we can control how we react to it. And I was steaming mad inside, but I kept my composure. I did get their coffee. We spent the morning with them asking all of the questions to Ram, and Ram would look at me when it was my part of the design and I would answer. But through those sets of meetings, I definitely earned their respect. And by the afternoon, they were asking me questions related to my design. And the next morning, they did not ask me to get them coffee. So I hope through that process, I helped change their minds. But I think it also developed in me a certain amount of resiliency, but also very early in my career, just to kind of have my spidey sense up and kind of be ready, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I think that we all experience what you experienced to some form. Even white men experience some form of questioning who you are and what you do and what you bring to the table. I think what's interesting about the way women handle this, and And I think it even may be further extrapolate to see minority women handle this, but the way we handle it always is to not put our thoughts out there because we don't want it to be want to be judged by what we're thinking. But in reality, we end up kowtowing, if you will, to those that are in power and leadership role, and we end up getting steamrolled in a lot of instances. It's very good to see that your mentor took care of you and made sure that you were seen and were a part of the conversation. I think that's an exception, not the rule.
Yeah, no, that Ram was really great. And, he's Taiwanese. He was a PhD from Florida, and we had I learned a ton from him. We had a very good working relationship and a mutually respectful relationship. So yeah, I think that's a great point about having a mentor who does see me and was there to encourage me to be seen.
Yeah. I have moved away from the concept of mentoring and coaching because I think that they are shortcomings. I think that as people who succeed or at least get past point A, we need to be advocates for those coming behind us, those that are working alongside us, those that are in front of us, those that have been trailblazers, but you still need to be an advocate because, women especially, I think, are not very good at promoting themselves and boasting about their credentials and what they bring to the table. So having that advocate that is going to make a phone call, help you get a job, make a letter of recommendation, whatever it is, to have those things. Whereas mentoring, at least in my opinion, mentoring is one of those things where it's kind of like an advice, like going to a psychiatrist or something, getting advice from this person. How do I handle this situation? What do I do about that? And coaching is about how to deal with the situation that you're in, whereas advocacy encompasses all of it, right? So you're coaching, mentoring, you're helping in every way you can, and you're always in the vein. You're not getting out of the vein because the situation is difficult or is challenging. You stay with the person as long as you know the person is really intentional about themselves and what they're trying to put forth out in the world.
That's a great point about advocacy. And I think advocacy also implies that you are wanting that person to be successful as opposed to just playing a role in their life. Right. And so I really like that nuance that you pointed out there.
Absolutely. And I think that, specifically in tech, on my podcast, we talk about this a lot. The consumers are often overwhelmed by the technology that is delivered to them. You get a new iPhone and to pick on Apple a little bit, they'll say, go for a tour on your phone. And, most of us don't have time to go for that tour on the phone to see all those pieces and parts. There should be some place where you get this little, notepad or some kind of place where you can go and find all the things that you need to do to effectively use your phone, as opposed to figuring it out over time. So by the time you figured it out, they've come out with a new phone and they want you to come out and buy that phone. So now what you learned about the iPhone 12 doesn't apply to the iPhone 13. So you've got this dichotomy of technology, and the fact that technology leaders and people that are in technology do not think about how these technologies will impact consumers to get the best out of it. So if you're going to charge someone $1,200 or $1,500, whatever it is, for a new iPhone, it seems like to me you ought to give them some guidance and be a resource for them to come back and ask for questions or help if they need to. Well, of course, we've outsourced everything we do to someplace else. We've dumbed down our customer support, our customer help, to the point where we only are going to ask and answer very narrow questions, right? So my phone's camera doesn't work. Well, they'll help me with that, but I can't figure out how to use my camera. I've got to figure that out for myself. And I hear a lot of people talk about Googling things, but that's what they've left us to, is we have to go Google it because there's no good source of information. There's no consumer protection for technology and how to use it successfully without, i.e. losing your identity, ransomware, spam and phishing and all of these other pieces that come along with technology that, like we're trying to figure it out. And so we work very hard on this podcast to make sure that we're telling people what's new, what's coming, how is it going to impact you the best we can. We can't reach everybody, but we try to reach as many people as we can. And I think that's an important part of advocacy, is actually making sure the person understands. So if someone were to say, hey, I want to go to college and I want to study electrical engineering, you Vickie would be like, okay, here are the things that you need to really focus on in this degree. Well, of course, we don't do that either. We kind of let people stumble their way through, which is why, advancement in a lot of ways is so difficult, because people are struggling. And so we don't bring the whole group, we bring those that stand out, that are, geniuses or whatever you want to call them. And then the rest of us just kind of fall in line behind them. So I do think that it's important that when we think about technology and the things that we're doing for consumers and the things that we're doing out and about for young people and women and marginalized communities, is always thinking about how do we make it better for the next time they come and revisit this thing. So I don't have to Google how to use my camera to take a black and white photo. It's somewhere I can go find it, click on this button, as opposed to going to support@apple.com, which is replete with information from years going back to the iPod and all that stuff. So, you never know what information you're going to get. And it assumes that you as a consumer is a kind of intuitive consumer. You can figure these things out. I think that there are a lot of people who would rethink that thought if they really looked at how we applied things. We give them the big dose of Alexa, call the grocery store and tell them I need a loaf of bread, but it doesn't tell you what Alexa is and what that means to you when you're giving away your information. So they've got your address, your credit card, they know, some consumer information about you, maybe how much money you make, where you live or something like that. So they can, package things and sell it to you or force it down your throat, versus giving you information that you can use to become a better consumer and in essence, take advantage of the product that you just spent money for.
I think you bring up a few good points there. One, it's so much of it is about the user experience, not the technology, because you can have the best technology, but if you don't know how to leverage it and how it integrates into your lifestyle, right? And how you can use it effectively and not get yourself in trouble with it. And I think a lot of people, I think what you're starting to see is like this technological divide, right? Where you have people who are comfortable with technology, they know how to avoid pitfalls, and then others who are less comfortable and they're a little afraid. And so they end up not diving in and they can't take advantage of it. And that becomes limiting because it limits their ability to get out and see things. It limits their ability to just experience these products fully, right? And I think it also puts sometimes, especially our older generations, it can put them at risk, for things. So anyway, hold on one second. Hi, sorry about that.
I think that that's a good point that you make, but I don't think it's limited to old people. I think that people make assumptions about young people
That's
too.
true.
They're technologists and geniuses with technology. And that's not true. I mean, yes, they can navigate social media. Yes, they can type faster than we can. Yes, they can do. But I think that when you talk about digging back behind the curtains, like I find how many young people can't figure out how to do simple things in Word or Acrobat, or how to install something or how to remove a virus or whatever it is. That's not there. So if you just scratch the surface, we all are there. We can all use our devices and use technology. I turn my computer on, I open Zoom, it all worked the way I expected it to work. So I mean, I am good at that part. But on the other side, that deep dive, I've been in technology. I started with IBM mainframes many gazillion years ago. And so today, I have all of that knowledge of what technology, the framework that technology is built on, plus the application of technology, because I worked in it. But so I serve as a technologist for my husband, my daughter, and my son. I retired, so I don't work for anybody anymore, so I don't have to go in and solve problems for other people, but I still am expected to explain people my son is like 20 times more smarter than I am. And my daughter is probably, smarter than he is in the ways that they come to the table. But there are things that they ask me that I'm thinking, wow, you should know this, you should know how to do this, but it's not. And it's an example, a snapshot, if you will, what it looks like for consumers. My favorite one to pick on is Equifax. So the Equifax breach, none of us are Equifax customers, never have been. I don't know if we ever will be, but we weren't. But our banks and our financial institutions were their customers. The breach affected them and us. And what Equifax did is they created this beautiful little dossier of how to resolve your problems. And majority of people, Black, white, young, old, whatever you are, did not take advantage of it because they simply did not understand it. And maybe that's what they wanted to happen, because i.e. they didn't have to spend out that much money. They didn't have to come out of their pocket to address all these issues that people were raising as a result of the breach. But then on the other side, there are people who now are stuck trying to figure out how to get their identity, how to fix their credit, how to, and then to add to that, you have all of these commercials asking you to do something. So there's a bazillion medicines that they want you to ask your doctor to take. There's technology they want you to buy. They want you, every phone carrier out there now has this message, we will upgrade your phone to 5G. All you have to do is just sign with us and we'll help you pay off your old carrier. But the problem with that is that, you're just moving from one place to the other without understanding why you're moving. Why are they offering you this? Why do they want you to do this? It is almost always an economic reason. It is not for your best interest. It's not what's in your best interest.
No, and there's, I think, a nuance sometimes. Like, I think the best products, and I think also the best company relationships are when it is mutually beneficial. And I think that's when so to me, it goes back to that word relationship, right? And when companies are approaching things in a transactional way, it is about you are giving them something which is usually money, and they are giving you something, a sort of snapshot, a piece of something, right? That may not have permanent value to you, right? But if a company, if an entity, a person wants a long-term relationship with you, that it is mutually beneficial and it's for the long term. And I think that goes on to, how companies interact with their consumers. What relationships are they building? Do they really care? Or is it just merely this transaction? And to me, it's like when you call, it's always interesting when I need to call someone for customer service, right? And it's like, do you call and are you on hold and going through a zillion different menus to get to the one where you can actually talk to a person? Or do you go to the chat bot and then you're, talking with the AI generated thing and then get to a person? And there are some experiences that are really positive and others that just aren't. And it's interesting, like, actually, so we've got Google Fiber for our internet. And I have to say that whenever I have dealt with anyone from Google Fiber, whether it's calling customer support or tech support or having one of their tech professionals come out, everyone has been really lovely. They've gotten everything done in a timely manner, and they followed through with what they said they were going to do. And they were knowledgeable. And that's all I asked for, but makes an impression on me because it is unusual today, because so many, I think, customer company things are just transactional.
Just transactional. All the relationships are that now. I think that, what you said about Google Fiber is wonderful to hear. I have AT&T and I have the exact opposite experience. God only knows who I'm talking to. Somehow or another, they just did something new with DirecTV, which, for months, I didn't even know who my company was, because, but I think that, we as people, we started this conversation talking about advocacy and helping others. I think that the problem with what we have created in our society is become so me-centric, right? So the company, if you will, Google Fiber, excellent relationship, does good customer service. And then there's others who do not. And what I think that they learn from these experiences is that if I can get away with it, I'm going to do it because it works for me. I always tell people, if you watch TV a lot, you watch a lot of these commercials, it costs them money to put that commercial on that television. And it costs them a lot of money. It's not just a couple $100 or something. It's maybe even millions, thousands, a lot of money. Why are they doing that? They're not doing that for you. They're doing that for themselves and what they will get. So if you and I remain, I don't know if you have this or not, so that's an overstatement, but if I stay as an Apple iPhone user, why have I stayed? And a lot of it is because it is easier. I know the iPhone, I've had it now. So I was originally the original Crackberry person. I had every BlackBerry they ever made. I was resistant to give up my BlackBerry. I was just crying in the hallways about giving up my BlackBerry when BlackBerry kind of went out of the carrier business. But since then, I have been an iPhone exclusively. I have not looked at any other technology. I won't even consider it. And it's not like I'm making an informed decision. I'm just comfortable with that technology. And that's what they're counting on. They're counting on you feeling, oh, yes, this works. I know who to go to. I know how to get things done. And I'll do that. And so a lot of it is going back to the part where we introduce, especially in your area where you're an entrepreneur. So let me give you my example. So I started the same time I started East Diversity Chess, I started my company. I have an inclusion consulting company, and I help people figure out how to deal with diversity and inclusion in the workplace, in IT, in general in the workplace, and how to have these conversations that do not upset the balance in the relationships you have with people. What I find with my company is how often I am a proven, people know who I am. They know what I do. I am, I tell my husband, I'm like, I'm known worldwide. I'm not just something that's here in North Carolina. I worked at Duke University. I worked at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm not just that. I'm somebody who does a lot for people. People know who I am. But when I come to you and say, hey, I've got this company, you should use our services. How can we help you? Well, how long have you been in business? Who do you know? How many connections? How much money do you have? And I'm like, yeah, but you can come ask me everything else you need, but you can't use my company. I'm the same person. I run this company. I founded this company. What makes you think I can't? And so I think that the transactional nature of how we interact with each other proved to me that you're going to work. Whereas, if I'm somebody big, I can screw up your life over and over again. And I'll have to prove it. And more people will come to me, i.e. AT&T and my cable service, so I only have Ethernet. I don't have Wi-Fi in my house. I only have Ethernet. Well, it's important. So I don't have Wi-Fi. I don't turn it on. I don't have a Wi-Fi modem or any of that kind of stuff, only Ethernet. So my service is essential for me to do my work, for me to do whatever I need to do. But AT&T doesn't care. They only know that I pay them that $150 a month for internet and $70-some, or it's the other way around, $70-some for internet and $150-some for cable. For what? I have no idea, because I'm not a big cable person. So, but I think that if we can find ways to improve relationships, and I think that your work, entrepreneurship, is one of those places where I think it's a really good place to start, because you're starting out there in a company to create something, to create an opportunity, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else. And if you can use that as a way to teach people, i.e. you said you're a lifelong learner, to learn about, to really take the time to learn about their lives and what's happening to them, as opposed to just accepting it because they don't know any better.
Well, it's like you make a great point just about context. And of course the dogs barking. The Zoom life, right? So the importance about context is that you don't know what someone has been through, whether professionally, personally, or whatever, right? And there are some questions, I think, that are in bounds, and there are some questions that aren't in bounds. And so I think sorry about that. Everything happened all at once, unfortunately. Life predictions. Anyway, as I was saying, context is important. And I think what you're saying, the point being, is that we can't, sometimes we give people the benefit of the doubt in an inappropriate way. And then other times we don't give other people, basically let them come to the table with sort of a free and open range, right? And I think it's important for us to really check ourselves and be open at all times, but also be equitable in how we're viewing things as well. And I think sometimes, I think all of us have biases, and we have to be able to check those.
I think that all of us have biases. The question is to the degree of their biases. I mean, I think that all of us inherently framed to what we believe in, the things and traditions and ideas that have been told to us from very young ages up until today. But I think in a lot of ways, our biases show up in so many ways. Like, why is it that we are in 2021 and we are still struggling with racism? I mean, like, and not just in the United States, but everywhere. We're still struggling with how to live with people who look differently from us, who have different experiences from us. And to the point that we go back to that meism I talked about earlier, that survival of me is the most important thing, which I think is flawed. Because that, what is that old German thing that when they came for this person, there was no one there, when they came, and then when I am the only person left, there's no one there. So if we are not doing all that we can to be inclusive, we're doing everything we can to be exclusive. So it's either one or the other. And if you dislike people for things that are so beyond their control, like I have a lot of gray hair in my hair. I have nothing to do with that. Nobody asked me if I wanted this. I didn't fill out an application for it. I just have it. Wow. But judge me now. This is my ageism. So you can tell how old I am by this hair. So you're making some assumption about me because I'm old. So does that mean only old people have things in common because they have gray hair? Or why can't it be that young and old? I have a friend that's in her 25, 26 years old. And she has a head full of gray hair. She intentionally turned her hair gray. So does that make her old, or does that? No, I think that is considered something else when young people have it than when older people have it. So all the things, all those stereotypes that you can label people with, age, race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, whatever it is that you can label, helps us to feel better about ourselves. I am a Black woman. Okay, what does that mean exactly in the world of things? Nothing. But for our society, the fact that I am Black and female makes me a double minority, right? So I got 2 box checked, whatever that might mean. And I am inferior to every white person that comes along, regardless of where they are in their lives, which to me is flawed in every way possible. I tell people all the time, the universe is the best example of inclusion there ever was. Walk outside your yard, in your yard. You don't have just one oak tree. You don't have just one crepe myrtle. You have all of these trees that have variety within them. If there was sameness among everything, just think about how short life would be if you only had one oak tree. That's all you had was oak tree. Think about that in a sense, or pine trees or whatever it is. We need the diversity. The universe gives us a guide, but we throw it up in the air and say, well, I don't believe that. I don't adhere to that. That's not really true in people and other things that we need to label and classify.
I think it has to totally agree with everything you said, except for the bias that because you're a Black woman, it makes you inferior, right? That bias that people have, because right, you don't believe that. I know I don't believe that. But I feel like it's like part of it is also the natural impatience of people. They don't want to take the time to get to know the person on the other side. So they try to short circuit to put them in whatever box has been in their past or whatever contextually they may have heard, right? Doesn't make it right. And I think until we recognize and face the fact that we are doing that, we won't be able to rewire and go about things in the right way, which every single person is different, right? And it's interesting to me that if you take the time to talk to someone, you will find more things alike about you and that person than not alike. I've been through some interesting exercises where they have people like grouped together. So they have people that look very different. So it's like they're different genders, different races. Maybe they have tattoos or not tattoos or whatever, right? And then they are like, how many people, asking random things about where they visited or, where they're from, rural or city, and so you find that there's more things in common than not, but it takes time and it takes authenticity. And it also takes vulnerability because it takes sharing something about yourself. And I think until we are willing to actually get to know people and share in an equal fashion, that people will continue to struggle with these things and I think it's also a matter of realizing that we all carry biases, we all act in inappropriate ways. And until we can also sort of address that and sort of say, hey, I want to be better and really look to do things in a better way. I think that's what we need in order to make real progress. And I am still hopeful that we can. Over the past couple of years, I feel like we've made we've made some progress. And I just hope the momentum continues, because what I don't want to see is the momentum that has started. I don't want to see that wane. And so I feel like it's up to us to keep up the conversations and to keep people aware that these things still need to be addressed.
I don't think we've made any progress. I think that the fact that Mr. Floyd was killed by a police officer, somebody in a position to serve and protect, kills a person in their custody.
It was awful.
Is absolutely terrible. And I think that the fact that people are talking about it, like the work that I do, I can't tell you how many calls or messages or emails I get where people ask me for basic things about uncomfortable conversation. Oh, one of my coworkers only listens to rock and roll music and it's too loud. I don't like that music. And I sit back and I think to myself, you don't know how to have a simple conversation about telling someone your preferences or for music or for whatever it is. You just can't say, while I don't like rock and roll music, I certainly appreciate your willingness to listen to it. And I will listen to, if you got a song you want me to listen to, I am happy to learn about you. I think that we are so quick to label people. Like my favorite mantra right now is this term people of color. Like, what the hell is that? Like, I try my best every single day to figure out who creates these terms and puts them in the population, and we adapt them. BIPOC, he, she, her. What are these things? I mean, like, we are human beings. What you look like and what your preference and what your identity is only important to you. And if others come in and see it as a downside or an inferiority or a less than, that's their problem. People should know by now. And I always ask this question. I went to high school in rural South Carolina, little small town, low country place. We talked about Christopher Columbus discovering America. We talked about the slaves. We talked about racism. We talked about Jim Crow. We talked about discrimination. We talked about redlining. Did they not have these things in your school? And I'm in a rural, South Carolina schools are absolutely worse schools, but well, probably other places too. But South Carolina schools are not great. And I learned that. You mean to tell me you did not learn that? You did not learn? When Mr. Floyd was killed, one of my colleagues came and said, Rochelle, you have got to help me. I have been trying to read and understand, what's a microaggression. Okay, that's a new term, so I get it. You don't know what that is, but you ought to recognize it when you see it, right? If someone says to you, blonde hair people are not as smart as brunettes, it's a microaggression. It's simple as that. It's intended to hurt or to assert the other person's superiority over you. Okay, thank you for sharing your opinion, but I don't see it that way. Let me move on to the next thing. And so what happens with us as we go along is we accept these things that people load on top of us as fact. I'm a woman. Okay, I can't argue that fact at all. I mean, I believe that's correct. But the question is, what is a woman? What is a man? We have these definitions that have been given to us about what these things are, but we don't really understand why we adhere to them and believe that they are correct. I mean, since they say that I'm a woman, I believe that I subscribe to that. When I check the box, it asks me my gender, I check female, but I don't know what that means to be able. So a transgendered person who becomes feminine, is that not a woman? Or are we going to do something else? We have to keep that transgender label on there. The person is just a woman now, or whatever they chose to be. Why does the label matter? Why is it necessary to categorize people and structure them in ways that make others feel better about themselves, as opposed to seeing all of us as humans and that we are all contributors to this universe, and we hurt the universe together, every last one of us, not just these people or that thing. We're all in this together, and we just need to see the equality of humans as opposed to the differences in humans. And I think your point was straight on, that we are, in many ways, more alike than we are different.
Totally agree. And it's like, I think we also have to remember, you bring up the point about the fact that so much of what we do, it's social constructs that we've created to sort of keep people in boxes or put power in other people's hands or what have you. And we are all in this together, and it has to be a we. It has to be a collective we, and we have to work together to get to a better place, And so it's about continuing to open people's eyes to this, continuing to help people sort of see that there can be a better way, and to realize that in order for that to be the case, people need to also change and stop putting people into boxes and excluding people from spaces and making assumptions.
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think that in order to get there, and I don't believe this is going to happen in my life. That's why I said, when you said earlier, you see change, I guess in a lot of ways you could say that. So we don't live under Jim Crow. We don't have slavery. We don't sell people into sex trades and stuff like that. We don't, but all of those things still happen in ways that are just, complicated. And I think that it's important that when we think about things, that I was saying this earlier. So here's my favorite one: people of color. So somebody asked me about that. Someone said, people of color struggle in technology. I'm like, that's an interesting statement. What does that mean? And she said, Black and brown and minorities. She said, they struggle in technology. And I said, are those people of color? And she said, oh yeah, that's what a person of color is. I said, where did you get that from? Where did you learn that? And she says, it's something that's out on the internet, that and BIPOC and identifying your genders and all that stuff, all that's out there. And I'm like, why is it out there? Why? Why do we need that, that label? Because last time I checked my Crayola box, there was a white in the colors. There wasn't just black and brown and purple and orange and whatever. There was white in there. So there are people of color too. So are we excluding them, and why? One of my friends says this to me all the time about black and white relations. He says, they love our rhythm, but they hate our blues. And, it took me a minute to dissect that, because I was like, okay, what? Yeah, he says, well, look. And so I'm always giving commentary about things. So kids that wear their pants underneath their butts, I don't know what you call that, but some kind of dress code, I don't know. And I'm not trying to label it at all, but kids who wear their kids. Normally, when you see it, it's usually black and brown kids that are doing this, they have I'm in the courtroom the other day. One of my friends was made a judicial judge somewhere, federal judicial judge. So I went to her ceremony, and there was a white guy, long blonde hair, tattoos everywhere with his pants. And I said, we have reached parity. We have reached it. We are there. We are there. And my friend who says that they love our rhythm but hate our blues said that's an example, so they can adapt our trends, things that we do, how we behave, but they don't want our lives. They don't want to confront what we confront every day, the racism that you feel every single day, trying to get your life on, just trying to go through life and live, So I think the NBA has this commercial about black and brown people in technology, and that there's this digital divide which has been there since the beginning, all of these things, and they're saying, oh, we're going to fix that now. Okay, the problem is that's not the way you fix it. You don't fix it by having these commercials that say this. You do this by the people who are in hiring roles, the people who have money, the people who are out there to give things, are able to help people get in the door. That's why I am such a fierce believer in advocacy. That's the thing. If you are you, so you talked about your company and your background and all that stuff. So, okay, great. So if I came to you and I said, Vickie, I know this really young person who's interested in, let's just argumentatively say white person who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur, and they need some tips and guidelines, would you talk to them? And you may say, well, Rochelle, I don't know who this person is, or I don't have time, or whatever it is. To me, the greatest commitment you make to the universe is what you agree to do for someone else, not for what you do for yourself. Because if you are too busy, you've got all these other pressures, and you don't have time for anyone else, what are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, well, so that goes back to what we were talking about before, which is paying it forward, right? And there's always something positive that comes out of a conversation, but you actually have to say yes. and you have to take the time. And it's a matter of some of that stuff, just it gets me fired up, and I can tell it gets you fired up too, when it's like people make certain assumptions and they put people in buckets. And it's like, I am so tired of the us and them thing, so no matter who the us or the them is, like, it doesn't, if like you start there, you're starting already on the wrong page. And so it's like, until we talk about this collective we, until we are actually willing to help each other, because I also guarantee you that every single person sitting in the seats they are, especially those in power, they did not get there by themselves. They got there by someone helping them, which means that we also need to help others. And until we can open more doors for people who maybe haven't been in those seats before, then that's where we're going to start to see change. But it does take prioritizing. It does take your time. And, it's a little bit of giving back to the universe. And, that's good for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. I really appreciate this. I am going to send you a video, but I'm going to edit it first. You know why?
Yep.
And then I'll send you the video, and you'll watch it and let me know if I may upload it. And then I ask that you stay in touch with me, because I think that, there are some things that we could do together that would be really great. And
I would love that. I would love that. And I've got a couple of new ideas that I'm working on. I would love to get your feedback on some of them, because I think your input would be really, really valuable. So thank you so much for this conversation and your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for yours as well. And I may ask you to come back and talk to us again and tell us about those ideas, because we always want to spread, ideas that gets us stimulated and gets the world excited about something. So please agree to come back at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe and stay away from COVID.
You too.
Bye.